Howdy doody. Free time over, it's G time, baby, let's go. Gurdjieff, Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson, Chapter 48, Part 3. We're in the afterword. We finished the book, we finished the narrative. Beelzebub finally made it home and completed his tale. And we are moving on. Howdy chat, first of all. We got another guy, we got Tyler. We got Songbird, aka Dylan. Break free, new account for Marshall. Sad to hear your old account got destroyed by YouTube. Is there any... Are you sure there's no way to bring it back? So you made a... I see you rage posted about essential salts and Nietzsche, and they took you down. Huh? That's sad to hear. That's sad to hear. Anyway, howdy Kimberly. And howdy to all the other friends who are about to drop in. Petro's here. Congrats to my breakup with Robert the Gooner, lol. I see you guys all liked the recent video. Yeah. Going after Robert and the Samaelians. We'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll have to make a more long-form video on the Samael situation. But nonetheless... Oh, damn. There's no way you... so this is break free, old Marshall. You tried to appeal and they said no? God, that sucks. That sucks. Oh well, bruh. Oh well. Hopefully nothing like that happens to me. Oh. I think if, like, maybe you get a YouTube silver play button, like, things are different. Or if you're at least monetized, things are different. Like, if you're a YouTube partner. Like, maybe you can appeal better or something, but, yeah. If you're not a YouTube partner, they're just like, who? Whatever, delete. Like, you just get crushed, lol. Samael versus Richard situation is massive, really? What do you know? What another guy, what do you know that I don't? Dylan, I'm pretty sure I'm a Samaelian. I have prayed often. Are you sure you're a Samaelian, Dylan? I thought you were like a hardcore Catholic or something. Catholic Templar Crusader. Songbird 69, let's go. Now, before we get distracted, let's just get into it, guys. Let's get into... Because we got off to... We left off at somewhere juicy. Because I believe it was around here where Gurdjieff, Mr. G himself, he was about to hit our G-spot and tell us a scientific definition between the differences between genuine man and false man with the inverted commas. So I think we got here. It is as follows. So let's see what the differences are. Like, I know Ouspensky outlines man as the three types of man 1, 2, and 3, and then you got fourth type of man, and then we got 5, 6, and 7, and we're told that man number 5 is a man who has basically the higher emotional cylinder, which implies he has the astral body. Man number 6 seems to have the higher intellectual cylinder, meaning he has objective reason. And perhaps a mental body, although Gurdjieff sometimes talks about it and then sometimes doesn't. And then, of course, man number 7 has a causal body. So man number 7 has the full package. He's causal, he has a causal body, he has real free will, and he has objective being reason, and his higher cylinders are aligned, and he has higher functions, and he can do all sorts of things that us ladies just can't even imagine. Oh, someone Russian in chat, thank you for recommending Ouspensky's In Search for the Miraculous. No problem, bro. It's a great book. It's a great book. Always glad to recommend a little Ouspensky. Oh, Dylan says Samael is a badass angel, edgy from heaven. Yeah, so that's the angel Samael. We're talking about the, like, author Samael. Does the bodies correspond to each cylinder? No. I mean, if you go for mental body and astral body, yeah, they kind of correspond to the cylinders. Higher emotional is the astral, and higher intellectual is the mental body, if you include the mental body. But there's this thing of the crystallization of the higher being bodies, because you can, even though you don't have access, like full control over the higher emotional cylinder, you can still have flashes of it and you can still connect to it and use it kind of temporarily in some cases. Whereas if you don't have a higher astral body, or if you don't have an astral body, you just don't have an astral body. That's where the distinction comes. So there seems to be, and this is just it, it's like to get an astral body, you know, we've gone through all the kind of stakes, but there seems to be something like you kind of connect to the higher functions, and the higher functions can bend back and do something to aid in the crystallization. So it's kind of like, it's not a one-to-one thing. There does seem to be astral body and higher cylinders, but there is definitely a PP touches correspondence between the higher cylinders and the higher being bodies. But so yeah. Does your mom correspond to my dick? Petro. Yeah, your mom loves to bounce on my higher being dick. Now, let's get into it, guys. Let's get into that astral booty. For the definition of man, considered from our point of view, neither anatomical, nor physiological, nor psychological. So this is interesting. So he's not talking anatomically or physiologically or psychologically. Contemporary knowledge of his symptoms can assist us. So these things are good. We can totally use this knowledge to assist in our categorization, but it's not the real categorization that Gurdjieff is talking about. Since they are inherent in one degree or another in every man, and consequently apply equally to all. Hence, they do not enable us to establish the exact difference we wish to establish between people. So Gurdjieff isn't talking about racism. He's not talking about casual racism. He's talking about competitive ranked racism. Like, how do you make a distinction between men and real men? This difference can only be formulated. What's up, gamers? Self-dribbling basketball howdy. Welcome, you came right at the perfect time. This difference can only be formulated in the following terms. Man is a being who can do. And to do means to act consciously and by one's own initiative. And of course, to act consciously means the action that you act out in the world has its origin internally. And that is to say, we think we act from our own, I had a thought and then I acted on that thought. Duh, I'm conscious. It's like, no, where did that thought come from? That thought only arose as an association to an impression that impacted you from the exterior. So it's like, most people are just balls in a billiard table. Like, external impression comes, hits us, we react to it. Out of the association comes thought, which goes into a feeling, which is a motivation for an action. Boom. We are like, we get input, we then give output. You go onto the street, go up to a random person and insult them, you give them input, you can predict the output, fist and face, that's the output. You put in specific input, you get a specific output, and you'll be right 99% of the time. You can predict it. A conscious man who can do, it doesn't matter what inputs they're getting, it doesn't matter what impressions impacts them. They can consciously from within themselves. There is some ground which is where they draw their actions from, that isn't just mere impressions impacting them from the external world. So that's what a real man is. Not any of these, like, why do you go to the gym? Oh, I just watched a couple of David Goggins reels and it got me excited. Yeah, okay, so it's an external impact. You didn't do it. It's like, why did you learn to play guitar? It's like, oh, I really loved, listening to this music and I wanted to imitate it. Boom. Everyone does things because of external impressions that impact them, not because of an internal impulse that's been there ever since they were born. And indeed, every more or less sane-thinking man who is able to be, if only a little impartial, must admit that hitherto there has not been, nor can there be, a fuller and more exhaustive definition. Yes, very based Gurdjieff. Gurdjieff is, this paragraph here is Gurdjieff basically being, I'm correct and everyone agrees with me. You know that meme of like Obama putting a medal on Obama? That's like, This paragraph there is that meme, but it's like Gurdjieff like putting a medal on Gurdjieff. Big if true, exactly. Richard's member? What? Who the hell is that? There's in chat. There's a guy called Richard's member, and he says, "I have an internal impulse for you, Richard. Thank you, Mister My member, bruh." And you've got a profile picture of Crowley, bruh. Come on, man. Come on. You're just that's the most perfect troll. That's the most perfect troll, bruh. I don't know who you are. Slow clap for you. Very good. Very good. Double points. Double points. Double points for real. Oh, man. Now, even suppose that we provisionally accept this definition, the question inevitably arises, can a man who is a product of contemporary education and civilization do anything at all himself, consciously and by his own will? No, we answer at the very beginning to this question. Why not? So this is hot stuff. This is hot stuff. Solely because, as the Institute of the Harmonious Development of Man experimentally proves, and from experiments categorically affirms, so i.e. the scientific method, we have scientifically determined that this is the case. Everything, without exception, from the beginning to end, does itself in contemporary man, and there is nothing which a contemporary man himself does. Very interesting. So he only eats because a desire within him tells him to. He only sleeps with women because a desire inside him tells him to. Or maybe he doesn't, but he only doesn't because of morals that were external to him, informs him to. Very interesting. In personal, family, and communal life, in politics, science, art, philosophy, and religion, in short, in everything entering into the process of ordinary life of a contemporary man, everything from beginning to end does itself. So it's almost like man is just a container and things come in and flow out. There's nothing real that remains in man. And not a single one of these victims of contemporary civilization can do anything. Very based. Very based. We're all victims of a modern world. Victims of the modern world. I think that's like a progressive metal album. I'm pretty sure, like Arion, Victims of the Modern World. Pretty sure that was pretty based as well. It was a based like metal album. We should all go listen to that right now. If you're watching this in the future, everyone go listen to Arion. A-Y-R-E-O-N. Let's get some Dutch progressive metal in on this. Now, what's this? Nulu in the chat. I don't want to eat a stuffed crust Pizza Hut pepperoni pizza right now. It is just... it's just me being... it's just a being within my machine. Exactly. This is exactly what I love about the German philosophical school of thought, which is the conception of will. So this is Break Free speaking. And through this conception, we have a view of life that is active and alive, rather than passive and deterministic. Exactly. Let's go. Gurdjieff, this is why I swear, like, there are some things when you, like, read Nietzsche, if you've read Gurdjieff and then you read Nietzsche, you're kind of like, wait a second. It's almost like, I feel like Gurdjieff definitely read Nietzsche. For real. Like, his concept of the magnetic center of gravity is like Nietzsche's concept of the organizing idea. And there's, Nietzsche talks about the drives within man, and Gurdjieff talks about the centers of the human machine, and there's just all of these little things, and I'm like, yeah. I feel like Gurdjieff totally read Nietzsche, and it's like Gurdjieffian thought is just an extension of Nietzsche's philosophy, but esoteric. Well, I mean, Nietzsche's already kind of esoteric if you read him properly. Now, I guess it's like what Nietzsche was, the only thing that limited him was the biological materialism of his time, whereas like Gurdjieff is like, no, let's do this shit. Let's go full esoteric. PP strong, let's do this. Now, this experimentally proved categorical affirmation of the Institute of Harmonious Development of Man, namely that the ordinary man can do nothing, and that everything, did I read this? That everything does itself in him and through him coincides with what is said of man by contemporary exact positive science. So that's really interesting. So when you want to goon, it's not you gooning, it's a being inside you that is a construct. And then you going to goon is merely you feeding that being inside you. It's not your true self. You're basically, as Nietzsche would say, man is merely an aggregate. You are just an aggregate of different impressions that haven't transformed within you. They're just kind of clumped together and have created different kind of beings. There's a multiplicity of beings within you, of aggregates within you, and they all have their own aims and desires. So what do we do in that situation? A goon homunculus, exactly. That's all we are. Basically, what we have to do is the goon pulse is the essence of the Akashic Princess. Sorry, chat's just always cracking me up. What we have to do is we have to create a new aggregate by intentionally absorbing esoteric ideas and philosophy. And we have to temporarily make an aggregate that's just of work ideas. And then this aggregate can fight the other aggregates and make space within us so that we can try and get to that ground where something real can be organized within us. That's what we got to do. That's what the beginning of the work is. It's not fighting the impulse to goon. It's trying to create a guy within us that can fight the demon of gooning on our behalf. Now, contemporary exact positive science, in inverted commas, I feel like there's a bit of sarcasm here, says that a man is a very complex organism developed by evolution from the simplest organisms, and who has now become capable of reacting in a very complex manner to external impressions. This capability of reacting in man is so complex, and the responsive movements can appear to be so far removed from the causes evoking them and conditioning them, that the actions of man, or at least a part of them, seem to naive observation quite spontaneous. But according to the ideas of Mr. Gurdjieff, the average man is indeed incapable of the single smallest independent or spontaneous action or word. All of him is only the results of external effect, yes. Man is a transforming machine, exactly. A kind of transmitting station of forces, exactly. Exactly. So I'm just reading chat again. Nulu asks, so we can overcome the desire not by fulfilling or fighting against it, but by creating another desire which sublimates the goon desire. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We sublimate our desires. We have to, like alchemy, we have to transform them. It's not that you destroy them. You have to transform them into something else. Yes. It's exactly the two wolf memes. It's the two wolf memes. Inside you there are two wolves. Hey T-Rex, howdy. Welcome. Thus, from the point of view of the totality of Mr. Gurdjieff's ideas, and also according to the contemporary exact positive science, man differs from the animals only by the greater complexity of his reactions to the external impressions, and by having a more complex construction for perceiving and reacting to them. And as to that which is attributed to man and named will, Mr. Gurdjieff completely denies the possibility of its being in the common presence of the average man. Will is a certain combination obtained from the results of certain properties, specially elaborated in themselves by people who can do. So that's interesting. This is interesting because when we think of will, what do we think of? Most people just think of desire. But he's saying will is actually like a combination of properties that we have to develop before we can actually will things. This is very interesting. Very interesting. True will, that is. It's almost like, you know how in the East they talk about wu wei, not doing, but to do wu wei, it's actually, what is it, wei wu wei? It's like, it's not doing, it's doing not doing. So you have to do not nothing. Well, it's not doing nothing. It's this complicated thing of like, true doing arrives from not doing, but you don't just sit around. You have to do not doing to achieve doing. It's very complicated. It's a very interesting thing. If you, I know it sounds like philosophical wank, but actually it's hot stuff. Break Free asks, when Gurdjieff talks about this ground or surface, maybe we can conceptualize it as the body without organ. I think he's talking about the essence, like the real essence. The essence of a man. I guess maybe Nietzschean wise, you know how Nietzsche talks about the beast within? Like, people have that morality, and then there's the beast within. But beyond the beast within is like the divine animal, or the primitive animal he talks about, like deep within man. It's like, and when he says animal, he doesn't mean something animalistic. He means animal as in basic. We have this basic, essential kind of psychic material, the ground. And that's the thing we kind of got to start with. And further proof of this is that Gurdjieff uses the analogy of machine to describe man, and Deleuze also does this. Deleuze is very interesting, but I gotta, that's just another thing to read, bro. T-Rex, I found out from your last video, I have the same last name of the founder of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. That would be so based if I'm related to Florence Farr. Oh, okay. Oh, you might be related to Florence Farr. That's interesting. Florence Farr is a very interesting person. She started like, secret society within a secret society. And she was like a leading member of the Golden Dawn as well. Like, she ran her own groups and stuff. Now, in the presence of average people, what they call will is exclusively only the resultant of desires. Yes, exactly. Real will is a sign of a very high degree of being in comparison with the being of the ordinary man, but only those people who possess such a being can do. All other people are simply automatons, machines, or mechanical toys. So this is a modern way of speaking, the way of machines. If Gurdjieff was teaching the 16th century, he would have said animal and man. Man is too animalistic, and we must, head towards something more divine. So there's divinity, and there's animal, and man is but a rope. Man is but a rope over an abyss. On one end is the animal, and on the other end is the divine being. That's what Gurdjieff is basically talking about. But in modern times, instead of saying animal, we say machine, because it's more modern to say that. Chadolf Fittler in chat asks, oh my god, what are the practical teachings of Gurdjieff? So this is that's an actually interesting topic, but it I know I'm going to go off on like a huge tangent, and I don't want to kind of do that. But nonetheless, there are practices, sitting practices and things like that you can kind of find throughout Gurdjieff's literature, or fourth way literature, if you know what you're looking at, but most of that was just taught orally. You can find it in the literature, but it's like you got to kind of dig through the dust, but it's like the main practices given is just self-observation and self-remembering. Richard's member, thank you for the donation. What's that? You ask, can you read through the entire AA curriculum? What, on like live stream? I mean, donate some more and we'll talk about it. Now, all people, similar, they're automatons, machines, mechanical toys, set in motion by external forces, acting just insofar as the spring placed in them by surrounding accidental conditions acts, and this spring can neither be lengthened nor shortened. Interesting. Nor changed in any way on its own initiative. And so, while admitting great possibilities in man. So that's interesting. So the spring is kind of like the will in normal people. It's just this desire, and in some people it like expends and then is just exhausted. But other people may have a slightly longer... Oh, thank you, True Viking, for the $5. Some people may have a longer spring, and so they can go into their desires like for a longer period of time. It's kind of like, you know, when you get a group of junkies and there's always one that can, like, you know, drink one, they're in a group of degenerates. There's always one that can, like, drink one beer more or take, you know, one spliff more than all the other guys. It's like that guy just has a longer spring than the others. No, self-dribbling basketball. No. The spring is just symbolic of, like, the will or the ability to, like, actualize your desires in normal people. And they can't lengthen it, which is interesting. So only a man with real being can lengthen his spring. And his spring then is true will as well. It's not bound by desires. Now, deny him any value. So while admitting great possibilities in man, so Gurdjieff says, you know, he's blackpilling, but at the same time he's saying, no, there are great possibilities in man. We deny him any value. We deny him any value as an independent unit. That's all he's saying. As long as he remains such as he is at the present time. So he's blackpilling, but he's never denying that there is a white pill. He's just, you need to accept these black pills first before you can take the truth, the white pill. For the purpose of confirming the complete absence in the average man of any will whatsoever, I will add here a passage. Richard's member, 99 cents. Thank you, Richard's. Thank you, Richard's member. God damn. The average man of any will whatsoever, I will add here a passage from another of Mr. Gurdjieff's personal lectures, in which the manifestations of this famous assumed will in man are picturesquely described. Self-drilling basketball. I want some of that pepper cognac Gurdjieff gets white girls drunk off. Okay. Addressing those present, Mr. Gurdjieff said, "You have plenty of money, luxurious conditions of existence, and universal esteem and respect. At the head of your well-established concerns are people absolutely reliable and devoted to you. In a word, your life is a bed of roses. You dispose of your time as you please. You are a patron of the arts. You settle world questions over a cup of coffee. And you are even interested in the development of the latent spiritual forces of man. You are not unfamiliar with the needs of the spirit, and are well versed in philosophical matters. You are well educated and widely read, having a great deal of learning on all kinds of questions. You are reputed to be a clever man, being at home in a variety of fields. You are a model of culture." So he's like setting up to knock him down. Let's see where he goes. "All who know you regard you as a great man of will, and most of them even attribute all your advantages to the result of the manifestations of this will of yours. Oh yeah, oh yeah. In short, from every point of view, you are fully deserving of imitation and a man to be envied. In the morning you wake up under the impression of some oppressive dream. Your slightly depressed state that dispersed on awakening has nevertheless left its mark. A certain languidness and hesitancy in your movement. You go to the mirror to comb your hair and carelessly drop the brush you have only just picked up. When you drop it again, you then pick it up with a shade of impatience, and in consequence you drop it a third time. You try to catch it as it's falling, but an unlucky blow of your hand the brush makes for the mirror. In vain you rush to save it. Crack. There is a star of cracks on the unique mirror, of which you are so proud. Damn, devil take it. And you experience a need to vent your fresh annoyance on someone or another, and not finding the newspaper beside your morning coffee, the servant having forgotten to put it there, the cup of your patience overflows, and you decide that you cannot stand the fellow any longer in the house. It is time for you to go out. The weather being pleasant and not having far to go, you decide to walk, but behind you glides your new automobile of the latest model. The bright sunshine somewhat calms you, and a crowd which has collected at the corner attracts your attention. So he's basically talking about the he's showing the mechanicalness of man in a narrative. Let's see where he's going with this. Let's see where he's going with this. You go nearer, and in the middle of the crowd, you see a man lying unconscious on the pavement. A policeman, with the help of some of the, as they are called, idlers, who have collected, puts the man into a taxi to take him to the hospital. Thanks merely to the likeness which has just struck you between the face of the chauffeur and the face of the drunkard you bumped into last year when you were returning somewhat tipsy yourself from a rowdy birthday party. You notice that the accident on the street corner is unaccountably connected to your associations with a meringue you ate at that party. Hold on a second. What the hell is a meringue? Am I even pronouncing that right? Show me what a meringue is. Show me your secrets. Oh, hello. What the hell is this? What the hell is that? Okay, one of these. Like a macaroon, but just like in the shape of a poop. Ah, what a meringue it was. Am I saying that right? Mirage. Oh, I should just say it in a French accent. What a mirage that was. That servant of yours forgetting your newspaper today spoiled your morning coffee. Why not make up for it at once? Also, it's like, yeah. He saw this thing and it reminded him of a thing, and it's like, then he's just going off bouncing off of whatever. Here is a fashionable cafe where you sometimes go with your friends. But why did you recall the servant? Had you almost entirely forgotten the morning's annoyances? But now, how very good this mirage tastes with the coffee. Look, there are two ladies at the next table. What a charming blonde. You hear her whispering to her companion, glancing at you. Now here's the sort of man I like. So now his sexual cylinder's going to get in. Do you deny that from these words about you, accidentally overheard and perhaps intentionally said aloud, the whole of you, as is said, inwardly rejoices? Oh my god, she likes me. It's like, what is it, women getting catcalled, and then it's like man getting a single compliment once a year? Suppose that at this moment you were asked whether it had been worthwhile getting fussed and losing your temper on the morning's annoyances. You would of course answer it in the negative and promise yourself that nothing of the kind should ever occur again. Need you be told how your mood was transformed while you are making the acquaintance of the blonde in whom you were interested and who was interested in you, and its state during all the time you spent with her? You return home humming some air, and even the sight of the broken mirror only elicits a smile from you. But how the business on which you had gone out this morning, you only just remember it. Clever. Well, never mind, you can telephone. Lol. You go on the phone, and the girl connects you with the wrong number. You ring again and get the same number. Some man informs you that you are bothering him. You tell him it is not your fault, and what with one word and another, you learn to your surprise that you are a scoundrel and an idiot, and that if you ring him up again, then a rug slipping under your feet provokes a storm of indignation, and you should hear the tone of voice in which you rebuke the servant who is handing you a letter. The letter is from a man you esteem and whose good opinion you highly value. So, like, man, this guy is just getting trolled. The universe is just hitting him with all these impressions, and he's just reacting. I mean, this narrative is supposed to kind of be like it, to just kind of show you this is the average normal person, like in their everyday life. The contents of the letter are so flattering to you that as you read, your irritation gradually passes and changes to the pleasant embarrassment of a man listening to a eulogy of himself. What a phrase. I know, right? How can you be angry when you have a servant, bro? Exactly. You finish reading the letter in the happiest of moods. I could continue this picture of your day, you free man. Oh, baby. Oh, that's such a good shot. Gurdjieff's phenomenology of the normie. That, yeah, exactly, exactly. Nuhu. This is a phenomenology of a normie. Perhaps you think I'm overdrawing. No, it is a photographically exact shot from nature. While speaking of the will of man and of the various aspects of its supposedly self-initiated manifestations, which for the contemporary what are called inquiring minds, but according to our reasoning, naive minds, are matters for wiseacring and self-adulation, it will do no harm to quote what was said by Mr. Gurdjieff in another conversational lecture, because the totality of what he then said may well throw light on the illusoriness of that will which every man supposedly has. Mr. Gurdjieff said, "A man comes into the world like a clean sheet of paper, which immediately all around him begin vivifying with each other a dirty and fill up with education, morality, the information we call knowledge, and with all kinds of feelings of duty, honor, conscience, and so on and so forth. And each and all claim immutably and infallibility for the methods they employ for grafting these branches onto the main trunk called man's personality. The sheet of paper gradually becomes dirty, and the dirtier it becomes, that is to say, the more a man is stuffed with ephemeral information and those notions of duty, honor, and so on, which are dined into him or suggested to him by others, the cleverer and worthier is he considered by those around him. And seeing that people look upon his dirt as a merit, he himself inevitably comes to regard this same dirty sheet of paper in the same light. And so you have a model of what we call a man, to which frequently are added such words as talent and genius. And the temper of our talent, when it wakes up in the morning, is spoiled for the whole day if it does not find its slippers besides the bed. The ordinary man is not free in his manifestations, in his life, in his moods. He cannot be what he would like to be, and what he considers himself to be, he is not that. Man, how mighty it sounds. The very name man means the acme of creation? Lol? But how does his title fit contemporary man? At the same time, man should indeed be the acme of creation. Is this like, he's just saying we're balls of pus on the universe? The fuck is acme? General term referring to the highest point or the peak of something. Oh, okay. Not acne, acme. That's so interesting. So at the same time, man should be the highest point of creation, since he is formed with and has in himself all the possibilities for acquiring all the data exactly similar to the data in the actualizer of everything existing in the whole of the universe. Yes, self-dribbling basketball. It says, too bad Crowley's do as thou wilt won the culture war and not Gurdjieff's awaken sleeping man. Exactly. Exactly. To possess the right to the name of man, one must be one. So we're not even men yet. We're just rational animals. And to be such, one must first of all, with an indefatigable persistence and an unquenchable impulse of desire, issuing from all the separate independent parts constituting one's entire common presence, that is to say, with a desire issuing simultaneously from thought, feeling, and organic instinct, work on all-round knowledge of oneself. At the same time, struggling unceasingly with one's subjective weaknesses, and then afterwards taking one's stand upon the results thus obtained by one's consciousness alone. That's interesting. Oh, hold on a second. Let's just read that again. That is to say, with the desire issuing... So, and to be such. So this is to be a real man with an indefatigable presence and an unquenchable impulse of desire, issuing from all the separate independent parts constituting one's entire common presence. That is to say, with a desire issuing simultaneously from thought, feeling, and organic instinct. So one of the main problems with us of what desire is it's lopsided. Our body wants one thing, but our mind wants another. Our body wants to be gluttonous and eat. Our mind is like, no, we need to be thin, because the emotions want vanity. And so a real man is able, or it's not able, it's all parts of himself issue the same aim. He has the same aim in all the parts of himself. So when he acts, it's a unity. It's not just one little insipid thing that's like, I want this, and then another thing within you replaces that desire as soon as as soon as you don't notice, as soon as you stop paying attention. So we are a multiplicity, but we're moving towards unity. Work on an all-round knowledge of oneself. At the same time, struggling unceasingly with one's subjective weaknesses, and then afterwards taking one's stand upon the results thus obtained by one's consciousness alone. Concerning the defects in one's established subjectivity, as well as the elucidated means for the possibility of combating them, strive for their eradication without mercy towards oneself. So that's without mercy towards oneself, not to other people. Anyone who continuously criticizes others, like, oh, he's just egoic, he's doing this, oh, he's got all these defects. Yeah, that's a red flag. That's a red flag right there. Sorry, I just read Kimberly's little comment there. The mind wants to goon, but the hand is tied. Exactly. You need to be a unity. If you goon, the entire body needs to be a unity. This is really interesting. To be strict with oneself, but not with others. And it's not to be not with others, but it's like, you're the one that needs the strictness, buddy. There's no point in you criticizing others for, you know, doing something that you only learned not to do a week ago. God damn, this chat's making me laugh. Speaking frankly and wholly, without partiality, contemporary man as we know him is nothing more nor less than merely a clockwork mechanism, though of a very complex construction. About his mechanicality, a man must without fail think deeply from every aspect and with an entire absence of partiality, and well understand it, in order fully to appreciate what significance that mechanality and all its involved consequences and results may have, both for his own further life as well as for the justification of the sense and aim of his arising existence. So this is interesting. It's like, what's the section of psychology where they talk about the plasticity of the mind, and they say through like thinking and creating habits and kind of self-analysis, you're able to actually kind of change some of the plasticity in the brain. And that was a very interesting finding, because it's, you know, it's a materialistic finding that shows that a kind of a contradiction in materialism, because it's like materialists say, you know, your matter and then consciousness just is epiphenomenal. It arises from complexity of matter. But here we have synaptic plasticity. Is that what it is? Here we have the idea in materialism that consciousness arises from matter and then bends back and can reorganize matter. This is a bit of a contradiction in a sense. Really, consciousness is primary, and it can change the matter that it sits in or uses as a throne to to interact with the world, this world that we live, suffer, and have our being in. So it's very interesting. Gurdjieff is kind of leaning, he's trying to like esoteric pill these normies and be like, look, you just, yeah, I agree, you're a clockwork thing, but there's some principle inside you that can actually redo the mechanisms and make yourself not just better, but you can also not be a clockwork. That's the thing that's just, like should be blowing the brain off all of the materialists. Or maybe that's where materialists would like stop reading into Gurdjieff or disapprove of Gurdjieff because he goes too far. No, you can't stop being clockwork. What are you talking about, Gurdjieff? You're radical. Exactly. Man is but a rope over an abyss. On one end is the clock, and on the other end is the real. Was the moan really necessary, another guy? Yes, yes it was. For one who desires to study human mechanality is such a term, Jesus. In general, and to make it clear to himself, the very best object of study is he himself with his own mechanality. And to study this practically, and to understand it sensibly with all one's being, and not psychopathetically. That's pretty funny. Is that what he's saying? Did I read that correctly? I'm a little bit dyslexic, as you can tell. Psychopathically. No, psychopathically, okay. I read it as psychopathetically, but that's... I mean, both ways are true. Anyway, psychopathically is how they teach you to do it in I guess, uni. They just pathologize everything and never fix anything. That is, with only one part of one's entire presence. And that's the other thing, yeah. They only rationalize their psyche. So Gurdjieff is talking about observing the self, but once again, there's a difference between... Remember, there's that very important part in the last chapter where he was talking about what is it, reason knowing and reason understanding. Reason knowing is just knowing with one cylinder, whereas reason understanding, you understand it with everything. So it's like you observe yourself, but not just with your reason and your mind. You observe yourself and you begin to understand the parts of yourself with all the parts of yourself. That's a very interesting distinction. So all of the parts of yourself get an understanding of all of the parts of yourself. This is really... I don't know if this is doing it for you guys, but for me, I'm throbbing right now. I'm absolutely throbbing. Like, I know you can't see my pants, but there's full bulge, baby. Let's go. It is possible only as a result of correctly conducted self-observation. Alright, yeah. I see my video on correct self-observation. So it's, what is it, another guy? Studying self equal analyzing the reactions of the body and mind when affected by various kinds of external stimuli. Yeah. It's not just analyzing. Analysis means to break apart. Psychoanalysis, you're breaking apart all of the different processes, psychic processes. Psychosynthesis is what kind of Gurdjieff is talking about. Yes, there's psychoanalysis there, but there's another part that's missing that Gurdjieff is really trying to talk about, bringing it together. So it's not just analysis with the intellect. It's like this analysis, and then you're analyzing not just your intellect with your intellect, but you're analyzing your intellect, your emotions, and your motor, and then that knowledge isn't just deposited then in your intellect. It's then deposited and understood with all of the parts. I don't know, it's too hard and abstract if you haven't done much of this kind of observation stuff, but if you, like, that's actually really, like, radical kind of point to make. Like, oh yeah, of course. Yeah, okay. This is where I've been going wrong. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, self-dribbling basketball is correct. The mechanality is always easier to see in others. That's why it's kind of useless criticizing others as well, because it's like, it's easy to critique. It's easy to see you know, the aggregates in others. It's hard to see the essence in others. As Mr. Ruach says, being too analytical prevents you from doing self-observation correctly. Exactly. My video on self-observation. Everyone go watch. Okay, now, let's keep going, guys. This is hot stuff. And as regards this possibility of correctly conducting self-observation and conducting it without the risk of incurring the maleficent consequences, which have more than once been observed from people's attempt to do this without proper knowledge. So that's interesting. This is the maleficent consequences of the person who learns to psychoanalyze and then they just become an egoist. As I mentioned in my video, it's like, oh, you're doing that? Oh, this is because you're pride. Oh, you're saying that? Oh, you don't like what I said? That's just your anger. And they just see it's like, I remember one guy said it's like the Darierization of society. Everyone becomes a critic. Everyone just learns this weird, what do you call it? Like, it's psychology slop. It's psychological slop. And they just psychologize everything. You're just an egoist. You refer everything back to the ego. That's just your ego. That's just your ego. Any spiritual people that talk like that, run in the opposite direction. Run in the opposite direction. It is necessary that the warning must be given in order to avoid the possibility of excessive zeal. Fanatics of the eye. That our experience, based on the vast, exact information we have, has shown that this is not so simple a thing as at first glance it may appear. This is why we make the study of the mechanicality of contemporary man the groundwork of a correctly conducted self-observation. So this is another reason why the fourth way is done in life, not done, you must separate, you must go to the ashram and go on retreats. It's like, no, you do it in life. You engage with life. You don't just passively watch Netflix, but like, you know, you watch people at work, you watch your family, you watch your friends. You engage with literature. You engage with culture, but at the same time, you know, find time in your day to sit quietly and to recapitulate your day. And once again, it's not an analysis. It's that almost that remote viewing, that objective, just kind of watch. You just watch. What if you Netflix and chill with someone? Yeah, just observe. Go for it. Go for it, another guy. Netflix and chill. Go to the cinema. Cinema and flick. Or do the popcorn trick. But what you gather shouldn't just be gathered with the mind, and also the data that you gather shouldn't just remain data within your mind. Those are the two mistakes people make. Before beginning to study this mechanality and all the principles for a correctly conducted self-observation, a man in the first place must decide once and forever that he will be sincere with himself unconditionally. And this is it. This is it. Honesty. I would say, forget about virtue of like, you need to be chaste or, you know, you need to be humble. Honesty. If you lack honesty in the path, you are fucked. I'm sorry, I shouldn't swear. I shouldn't swear, but it's like the main tendency in all spirituality, mysticism, magic, the main tendency that all people have is to move the goalposts closer to themselves. I'm enlightened. Why are you enlightened? Oh, you know, because I experienced this. Well, in the Buddhist literature, it says that you experience this, and you become immune to all criticism. And when you received criticism, you started crying. So how do you explain that? It's like, oh yeah, all of that in the Buddhist sutras, that's just metaphor. It's like, no. People have a tendency to move the goalposts closer to themselves, to where they are. This is the whole thing. You need to be honest with yourself. If you're not honest, you can't do the work, because you'll always fall into this thing of like, oh, you see this in other people, but you don't see it in yourself. Or maybe you see it in yourself, but there's this thing where people admit things almost in a kind of a Catholic, of course I'm like this, but they don't really admit it deep down. is without proper honesty, you just fall into delusion. Straight up. Straight up. God damn. Sorry, I'm just like reading chat again. Another guy. Dylan fell into key deviation. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Transmute it into weapon grade vril. Really? Really? We gonna bring that up again? Now, sincere with himself unconditionally, will shut his eyes to nothing, shun no results, whatever they may lead him. Be afraid of no inferences, and be limited by no previous self-imposed limits. And secondly, in order that the elucidation of these principles may be properly perceived and transubstantiated in the followers of this new teaching, it is necessary to establish a corresponding form of language, since we find the established form of language quite unsuitable for such elucidations. Very interesting. I should also put here that these elucidations are yours. You don't psychologically undress yourself in front of other people. And don't accept psychological analysis from other people. It's you doing analysis on yourself. You're gaining self-knowledge. No one can do the work for you. If someone comes to you and says like, oh, you've just got ego, you've just got pride, that's actually useless in the first place. Like, I don't get teachers that are like, bully their students and are like, yeah, I'm trying to show them their ego. That's actually retarded. That is actually retarded. People who are like that, red flag, run in the opposite direction. So, another guy, since you mentioned honesty, what other virtues or aspects do you think someone who embarks on occultism needs to have? I mean, look, all the standard virtues are great. You know, I was knocking, chastity and humility and stuff like that, but you can't be a complete douchebag and do the path. It's like, exchange some of that pride for a little bit of humility. That's good. It's good. I would say the other one, it's more an understanding of what a virtue is as well, which I would say kind of a mother virtue in that sense is what is called temperance, but is understood as kind of like this ability to moderate energies, or to regulate energies intelligently. But this is going to just take us onto another topic, so let's just keep plowing through. Is Big Rich going to continue onto A&E Part 2 and 3? What's A&E Part 2 and 3? All and Everything Part 2 and 3. Okay, I got you. We're gonna do after this we're gonna do some Manly P haul. We're gonna have Manly P all over us, and we're gonna get into the secret teachings of all ages. And then after that, I'm thinking Blavatsky's Secret Doctrine. Because, there's all of this literature that people talk about reading and then they just never read. And I'm like, look, for future, occultists, Manly P. Hall, the occult scholar from the previous century. There are all of these works that people talk about, but, they don't read. And we should totally read them. If the Western mystery tradition was a university, was a school, was still a mystery school, what would be the core texts? Like, Beelzebub's Tales, Secret Teachings of All Ages, Secret Doctrine by Madame Blavatsky. These are things that probably, you should have under your belt if you're going to interact with the tradition. Now, let's not get distracted and keep plowing. As first regards the first condition, it is necessary now, the very outset, to give warning that a man unaccustomed to think and act along lines corresponding to the principles of self-observation must have great courage to accept sincerely the inferences obtained, and not to lose heart, and submitting to them to continue those principles further, with the crescendo of persistence obligatorily requisite for this. Another thing I should mention is to not just fall into psychology. The psychologization of spirituality and its consequences have been a disaster for the Western tradition. You don't just sit and be psychological. If it's like vegans who just do stuff with their body and think they're spiritual, it's like, no, vegans never get past the level of the body. If you psychologize spirituality and talk about ego, 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 you never get past the mind. There is something beyond the mind. This is good foundation, but it is something to be overcome. It's not something to obsess about and make the entire work. It's just all psychological, bro. Trust me, bro. No. There's a big danger in that. These inferences may, as is said, upset all the convictions and beliefs previously deep-rooted in a man, as well as also the whole order of his ordinary mentation. And in that event, he might be robbed, perhaps forever, of all the pleasant, as is said, values dear to his heart, which have hitherto made up his calm and serene life. Thanks to correctly conducted self-observation, a man will from the first days clearly grasp and indubitably establish his complete powerlessness and helplessness in the face of literally everything around him. So this is the first foundation, is the knowledge that you are merely you're merely a machine reacting to everything. But it's interesting, he goes really hardcore. It's like this powerlessness. It almost like he's like psychologically breaking down his students. You're going to have a midlife crisis to do the fourth way. With the whole of his being, he will be convinced that everything governs him, everything directs him. He neither governs nor directs anything at all. He is attracted and repelled not only by everything animate which has in itself the capacity to influence the arising of some or other association in him, but even by entirely inert and inanimate things, without any self-imagination or self-calming impulses which have become inseparable from the contemporary man. He will cognize that his whole life is nothing but a blind reacting to the said attractions and repulsions. So it's to kind of gain knowledge of yourself as this kind of thing adrift in the water. Yo, Big Richard, why do I always get hymns ads only when watching your channel? Very sus. Bruh, I don't choose the ads. That's the YouTube algorithm, bro. That says more about you than me. He will clearly see how his what are called world outlooks, views, character, taste, and so on are modeled. In short, how his inevitability was formed and under what influences its details are liable to change. And as regards, hey, find 3 in the chat, howdy, howdy. And as regards the second indispensable condition, sorry, T-Rex asks, what's Hims? Hims is a Viagra brand, I'm pretty sure. And as regards the second indispensable condition, that is the establishment of a correct language. So this is interesting. Let's see what he says about this. This is necessary because our still recently established language, which has procured, so to say, rights of citizenship, and in which we speak, convey our knowledge and notions to others, and write books, has, in our opinion, already become such as to be now quite worthless for any more or less exact exchange of opinions. The words of which our contemporary language consists convey, owing to the arbitrary thought people put into them, indefinite and relative notions, and are therefore perceived by average people elastically. In obtaining just this abnormality in the life of man, a part was played, in our opinion, but always that same established abnormal system of education of the rising generation. And it played a part because based, Gurdjieff, based, as we have already said, chiefly on compelling the young to learn by rote as many words as possible, differentiated one from the other only by the impression received from their consonants, and not by the real pith of the meaning. put into them, this system of education has resulted in the gradual loss in people of the capacity to ponder and reflect upon what they are talking about and upon what is being said to them. That's interesting. Very interesting. Learn by rote. So as in, back in the day, kids were just taught to remember things and then on a test tick the right boxes. So they're not really engaged with it. It's different from, like, say, learning something and then acting it out in a play, because that's kind of, I would say, moving multiple cylinders at the same time. Ironically, actor work and theatre work is highly esoteric. Fine 3, thank you for the $10. Loved your interview with Pantano. That was so excellent. Gateway drug. Yeah, Pantano was the real professional. I was like peeing and pooing myself that entire time during that interview. I don't think it kind of like shows up, but I was like just all over the place. He was really professional though. He was really professional. Yeah, this here, he's talking about education. Gurdjieff is talking about education and the loss of the ability to actually contemplate. And it's kind of reminded me of, like, nowadays, I saw like a tweet of someone saying that, like, kids of nowadays lost the ability to read old works from a certain point of view, because it's like they find the point of view like too judgy, or no, it's the omniscient view. They hate kids nowadays hate books that like read in an omniscient view, because they're just like, who is this guy judging all of these people? It's like they don't get it. They've actually lost that ability. They can only read like point of view books nowadays. And I was like, that's really interesting. Very interesting. It's almost, our education really decays certain things about us. Omniscient viewpoint. No, not that another guy. As in, when you read books, there is first person like books, like American Psycho is written from first person. There's third person, and there's omniscient viewpoint, which is kind of when you can, I think Dune is omniscient viewpoint, where you see from a person's view, but then in the same chapter you'll read from another person's point of view. So it's almost like the book is written really from the narrator's perspective, almost like there's a godlike being that can see into people's minds, and that's you the reader reading kind of the book. And you can do a lot of different things from different viewpoints. So like from a different, from the omniscient viewpoint, you can give the reader information that one character has but another character doesn't, and then as you're kind of like reading through, you see the two characters come together and you're like, oh, is this? So Tyler says Game of Thrones is omniscient by chapter. That's it. Game of Thrones has a really interesting way he does it, because it's done, that's actually done point of view, but each chapter changes the point of view. And in a chapter, you don't like jump from one character to another. In a chapter, it's just that person's point of view. And so it's actually, Game of Thrones is really interestingly wrote, because it's like a pseudo-omniscient point of view. And it's really interesting because one character will literally know something that another character won't. Like, you'll be reading one point of view and they'll hear of another character's death. And then you'll get that character's chapter and you're like, oh, here it comes. And then it's like, oh no, psych. They don't actually die, but they make people think they do, and it's like, oh my god, and it's like, yeah. Anyway, I'm just like going off now. Going off on a massive freaking tangent. God, guys, come on, man. But that's like the only way in literature you can describe nuance of actions. Yeah. So that was what that like tweet was about. Like, kids nowadays only read like point of view and like, chat, is this real? And so when they read like an omniscient like viewpoint, they're just kind of like, why is this guy judging everybody? And they can't read it anymore. I was like, oh, that's interesting, because it's like what Gurdjieff is saying here. Kids, they're just given this learn by rote, and now it's like learn by rote and they just lose the ability to ponder, where nowadays it's like, kids, only, you're amazing. It's all about centered on them. And so they never learn to kind of look outside of themselves, and they just feel the omniscient view as kind of like this judgment machine or something. And I was like, that's an interesting thing. It's like this, basically, I'm just saying, like, education itself is a block for you learning the work. Your own education is a problem. Big tangent there for one sentence. Let's keep going, guys. Let's keep going. As a result of the loss of this capacity, and in view at the same time of the necessity to convey thoughts more or less exactly to others, they are obliged, in spite of the endless number of words already existing in all contemporary languages, either to borrow from other languages or to invent ways more and more, or to invent always more and more words, which has finally brought it about that when a contemporary man wishes to express an idea for which he knows many apparently suitable words and expresses the idea in a word which seems, according to his mental reflection, to be fitting, he still instinctively feels uncertain whether this choice is correct, and unconsciously gives this word his own subjective meaning. So Gurdjieff, and going back to this, Gurdjieff is giving his own take on, like, the foundation for a good work is a creation of a new language, a work language we need to kind of start creating. And I don't know if I agree with this. I like understand where he's coming from. I understand where Gurdjieff is coming from, but the way I see it is there's no way around the problem of language. You have two choices, the philosopher or the poet. Teachers from all eras will teach either via the philosopher or the poet, or they'll mix the two. The poet is the person who speaks in parables and pithy one-liners and stories and narratives, and that he gives his people, like you could say Jesus giving parables is like the way of the poet, but then like secretly to the followers, then it's like, you know, in Gnostic Gospels, you have all of this really crazy cosmology and it's all like Jesus giving secret teachings to his close disciples. That's the way of the philosopher. The way of the philosopher is, instead of the way of the poet, doesn't actually say it the way it is. He gives a parable that indicates in the way of points toward truth. Whereas the way of the philosopher is to talk about truth so artistically that you make language bend back on itself. You create new words to try and, like, you know, to just say one thing, you fill up an entire book, and it's highly technical, but it is exact and can actually help you if you wrap your head around it. That's the only two choices you have. Poetry, or the way of the poet, or the way of the philosopher, if you want to talk about truth or the work. Poetry is like science, philosophy is like symbols. That's an interesting take. I'm not sure if I go for it, but it's something like that, yeah, for real. And Gurdjieff is basically trying to bypass this by saying, like, if we create a new language, and I'm like, look, this is the problem with the Western tradition as I see it, is we used to have our way of talking about internal phenomenological perceptions within our Western tradition. The only problem was it was wrapped up in church doctrine, and in the Age of Enlightenment, that was thrown out with the baby in the bathwater. So as time went on, how do we talk about inner psychological and spiritual states? Well, two things happened. One, psychoanalysis arose as a science, and two, we started translating sacred scriptures from the East. So in nowadays, you see certain movements either do one of two things. They either over-psychoanalyze the phenomenological states in spiritual schools, or they borrow heavily from Eastern teachings and be like, oh yes, you have reached Samadhi by doing your Satori meditation, and, like, you know, all of that kind of stuff. Or maybe they fuse the two and they go both psychological, and they try to, like, go, like, you know, your ego, which is samskara, and it's like, no, that's like, samskara isn't like a one-to-one translation of ego. Like, that's so bad. And like, so many things become clustered up, and just like there's a that's why I don't even like using the word ego anymore in the Western tradition, because it's become meaningless. A lot of words like meditation, ego, even kundalini, and enlightenment as well, they're just all meaningless because of what Gurdjieff is describing here. Everyone places their own subjective understanding on them, and then they come together, and one person means this, one person means this, one person means this, but they all said ego, and it's like, it becomes a cluster, complete cluster F. And so it's like, I get why he wants to create the work language then, But it's like, I don't know if I agree. I don't know if I agree. I think it's like, I feel like a proper system will just have, I mean, in a sense, maybe I do agree. A proper system will inevitably grow its own way of talking about its phenomenological states, but that should grow naturally, kind of over time. And if you enter that system, you should learn the system's own understanding of it. This is where, like, esoteric literature from the 1920s, written by Western occultists, because it's the 1920s, a lot of them will use words like yoga and dharana and dhyana and samadhi. But if you know Eastern stuff, you read it and you go, oh, these Westerners don't know what they're talking about. But if you actually read what they're saying and you go through that their tradition, you realize, oh, no, they do know what they're talking about. They're just not talking about samadhi. They're not talking about yoga. They're actually talking about the Western tradition. They're just using Eastern words because that's the hot thing at the time. So when they say samadhi, they mean something particular. That's not what samadhi means in the Yoga Sutras, so to speak. It's like, and that's kind of like, I feel like an error that a lot of those early kind of 1920s Western occultists did, and they just it kind of messed up the place, really did. But if you can go back and understand their system and understand when they talk and say those words, what they're trying to say, and this is the thing, I think the skill you should create is trying to understand what the person is saying behind the word. You're never going to create a perfect objective language for this work. It's more read as broadly as possible and kind of get the skill of trying to understand what the person is trying to say. That's a more useful skill than just kind of going full, let's create our own language. This will be the foundation. Like, I don't know, Gurji. I don't know, Gurji, if I can follow you there. What's everyone in chat saying? Isn't this the point of embedding knowledge in pictures and symbols? Blah, blah. Borges is such a great voice on language. To highly recommend. Love me some Borges. Ramirez specifically says Europeans should not study Eastern traditions. Yeah, I've come around to that as well. Like, I mean, there's some stuff you can study it. You can study it. It's fine. But it's like, I have some very deep suspicions about the way Eastern traditions are presented to us, especially Buddhism. Buddhism, the more and more time goes by, the more and more I look at Buddhism as very suspicious and very sassy baka, very sassy baka. Hey Akash, how's it going? My ideal human is warrior philosopher that blends both the intellect and acts of violence. Based, all women understand the hidden meaning behind dance and universal language. Macarena. Bruh. The Kybalion is almost an inverse of that, lol. Kybalion is the inverse of a lot of things. Language is like trust. In sharing a symbol, you hope to agree. Yeah, this is the problem. With language, it's useful for being in the world. Like, I look out the window and I see a tree and I point to that object and I say tree, and you see what I'm pointing at and you also say tree. We know what we're talking about. But if I say concentration and you say concentration, or we talk about internal states, it gets a little... It's where it gets a little sassy baka. But the objectivity of internal states, that's why I think phenomenology has its place in the work. Not psychoanalysis. I think this is where everyone went wrong. People went to Freud and not to Husserl. We need to all go back to and read Henri Bergson and Edmund Husserl. That's what we need to do. That's the real deal. It's the real deal. Now, I emphasized dwells upon this or that aspect notion of the word, invariably concentrating the whole meaning of the word upon one feature of the notion indicated by it. That is to say, the word signifies for him not all the implications of the given idea, but merely the first chance significance dependent upon the ideas formed in the link of automatic associations flowing in him. Hence, every time that in the course of the conversation the contemporary man hears or speaks one and the same word, he gives it another meaning. at times quite contradictory to the sense conveyed by the given words. And I think this is why in Gurdjieff's Beelzebub's Tales, he invents all of this new language, because it's like, if he had just said law of seven and self-observation and this and that, it's like we would have just read it, but then associated it with things in our mind that we already know. But because it's this new word and it's all funky and you have to like take time to pronounce it, it brings our full attention. And we take time to try and understand, like, is this what he's talking about? And it's like, it's hard. This is the way of the philosopher. Gurdjieff did the way of the philosopher in Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson. You could say both are there. And then the pithy one-liner, the parables are the Mullah Nasruddin sayings. The Mullah Nasruddin sayings is the way of the poet. And then Gurdjieff, and then the Beelzebub talking and ranting in this dialectic, this Platonic dialectic. Him just talking for hours and hours on end, and then Hassian being like, yes, Socrates. That's then the way of the philosopher. So for any man who has become aware of this to some degree, and has learned more or less how to observe this tragicomic feast of sound, sorry, we just got a meth addict running down the road yelling, is particularly sharply constated and made evident when others join the conversation of two contemporary people. Oh. Each of them puts his own subjective sense into all the words that have become gravity center words in the said, so to say, symphony of words without content. And to the ear of this impartial observer, it all perceived only as what is called in the ancient Sino-Culupianian tales of the 1001 Nights, cacophonous, fantastic nonsense. Yeah, and the New Age ruined the occult language for real. I completely agree, Kimberly. You know my stance on New Age slop. Conversing in this fashion, contemporary people nevertheless imagine they understand one another and are certain that they are conveying their thoughts to each other. This is why, look, I get it, faffing about and like talking too much to each other. It can sometimes make it too intellectual, but at the same time, we just got to talk. We got to be in dialectic. We got to make sure we understand each other. And sometimes faffing about and talking is the only way to do it. This is, I'm just defending these streams, okay? Another guy asks, Richard, in the study of self, are you supposed to notice that you are studying yourself at that moment? I'm aware that it shouldn't be something that you do actively. So this is interesting, because when you say this, this is the problem with people being too intellectual. I like what Gurdjieff, he talks about the intellectual cylinder being the intellect. The problem with what you just said is the next step to that is, how do you stop falling into an infinite regress? Because it's like, I intellectually see that I'm studying myself, but then I see that, and then I see that I'm studying that, and you fall into an infinite regress. This is why I said in my self-remembering video, it's not an act of the intellectual cylinder. It's something else. So at first, yeah, you are working, you are trying to work to unify all of your centers. But in the end, your consciousness, what cylinder does your consciousness itself work through? I'll tell you, it works through the higher cylinders. So you're not actually using the lower cylinders in that sense. You're actually kind of stepping back, and it becomes this thing. And it's like this thing that you do. When I say you, what do I mean? And when I say do, what do I mean? This is where we start. And this is why my self-remembering video was really long. When really it's simple, but to say it correctly, it bends back on itself. And I don't like people being like, self-observation, it's just this. And you just do this, and it's like, yeah, I get it. But the problem is how do you maintain it over a long period of time, and how do you not fall into self-calming and, self-calming and believing that you've attained, basically. Concentration without effort from Tomberg really helped with this. Exactly. Nulu is correct. The first chapter of Meditations on the Taro is actually really good with that. The meditation, the concentration without effort. The inner father completes the work. Yes, yeah, in a sense. This is this kind of talk. There needs to happen in alchemy. There needs to happen this thing which I call the separatio, because this consciousness is mixed in with all of your functions, and there's no way for you to separate it and be like, because when I say like you view it, what do you mean? It's like most people are just like, yeah, I analyze, and they're just talking about the intellect, not the consciousness in and of itself. But how do you even make that distinction if you're new and you don't even understand that there is a distinction? The consciousness and the function of the human machine are all mixed together. So there needs to be this separatio, this separation of the functioning and the, what you are in and of itself. Alchemy is a fantastic shared language. Exactly. You need to achieve, this is what I would say the first step in the work is achieving separatio, the separation. Because once you do the separation, then it's like, oh, you understand what the essence, consciousness is, in contra to the intellect, the emotion, the motor, i.e. the functions. You're not functioning, you're not doing. Let me put it like this. I'm going to have to just like stop the stream here because we're going to go over time. But what's the difference between attention and intention? When you use when you use intention, you are intending, you are doing something. When you're using attention, you're not doing anything, but you have attention to what comes in. Okay? So you're not, when I say put attention on your right hand, are you placing your conscious awareness into your right hand, or are you thinking in your mind and you're kind of creating your right hand as a kind of a concept in your mind? This is the difference between intention and attention. Think of it like another way to explain this is kind of like, think of two people who have like a lighthouse as their head. And when you say place your attention on your stomach, one of them, the lighthouse, like the light stays in the head and it turns down and looks to the stomach, and one of them, the lighthouse, the light itself actually moves into the stomach region. This is the difference between attention and intention. Your awareness itself is attention that you place into your physical body. Gurdjieff gives a practice where he basically says place your attention into your thumb, and then once it's there, then place it into your right big toe, and then once it's there, place it into your left big toe, and then once it's there, place it into your left thumb, and then once it's there, place it into the tip of your nose. And it's like you go through this cycle. And it's not like you go, I'm intending to do this. It's very subtle, this practice. It's very interesting. You're just placing your attention there and you're receiving impressions. Just receive the somatic impression. You just have attention. And then once your attention is there and you've received the somatic impression, move on to the next thing. Move on. It's this attention. It's not intention. You're not intending to do. And this is problematic because most people use intention, which is a function of the human machine. You're just using attention. You're trying to separate the consciousness from the function itself. When you count, there's another practice that's kind of given in the fourth way. When you count numbers, so when you imagine counting down from 100, 199, 98, 97, 96, 95, 94, but do it in chunks. So do it in chunks of like 6. So you go 100, and then you go, what's next? 94. You're doing a calculation. What's after 94? It's 88. What's after 80? Oh, then it's minus another 6. Oh, it's like 82. And then what's after that? Oh shit, I was like, you go 76. But what if you count up and count down at the same time? Try this practice now. Try counting down 6, but counting up 7. So you count up from 0, so you go 7, and then you count down from 106, so that's 94, okay. And then you go back to the other thing, you go, okay, where was I? Let's go 7. So 7 is 14. 7 plus 7 is 14. We're counting up to 107. So 7 plus 7 is 14. Now I got to go back. Where was I? 94. 94 minus 6. That's going to be, it's going to be 88. Yep, okay. Now where was I? 14. Okay. 14 plus 7 is what? 21. Now where was I? I was at 88, right? Okay. 88 minus 6, 82. Back 21. 21 plus 7, 28. And then you kind of switch back and forth. But what's happening here? When you're doing this, what's happening? So you think of your mind as a room. Your mind is a room, and within the room are objects, i.e. the thoughts. And what you're doing is you're pulling one into your awareness, and you're doing a function. You're calculating. And as you're doing that, you're then moving that away, pulling the other thing in, and doing another function. But while you're doing that, there has to be something in you that's holding on to this other thing. And then when you push that out, it needs to pull this here. And then while it's doing this function, it needs to hold that other thing. While this is going on, that's the intellectual cylinder going. While that's all going on, there's something observing that process. And it's not topological. It's not behind. It's not in front. It permeates the entire room. When you live in the world, you don't notice the sky, you don't notice empty space. But when you climb a mountain, you see the sky, you see the emptiness, and you can kind of be aware of it when you go back into the valley. This is the consciousness that you're trying to kind of apprehend through practices of attention. This is what really non-meditation is. It's you kind of trying to, you're not doing. In a sense, you're non-doing. You're creating a part of you that has the habit of attention that can basically absorb knowledge objectively, absorb knowledge of yourself objectively, absorb knowledge of your body objectively. And this is the separatio. Because the consciousness itself, that thing can become aware of itself. Like an eye viewing itself, or it's like the CPU getting knowledge of itself, or think of like a movie projector that shoots light out and it projects something on a screen. But imagine if the light could bend back on itself and illuminate the projector itself. These analogies, once again, these are analogies, these are pithy one-liners to try and point in the direction. So it's hard whenever you say things like, oh, so when in the study of the self, are you supposed to notice that you are studying the moment? That's so easy for the intellectual cylinder to bend back an infinite regress. It's not a function of the intellectual cylinder. That's the end goal. Self-observation's great, but eventually you get into self-remembering, and the end goal of self-remembering, it's not a function of the human machine. It's just the consciousness itself identified with itself. The ground. And from this point, from that point, because it's not a part of the functioning, you can start from that ground outwards, and then you can do. You have the opportunity to do. You can do something completely original that isn't just an impression that came into you and bounced off of your internal cylinders and then is coming out again. Anyway, that was a bit of a talk there right at the end. I think we got to leave it there, guys. And I'll see y'all next week. Thank you to everyone who donated. Pardon me. Thank you everyone who donated. Thank you for sticking around and hearing my demented ramblings. Thank you for making me laugh. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.